Good evening, Libertarians. My name is Dan Fishman. I am the Executive Director of the Libertarian Party, and I am so excited to welcome you to another episode of Libertarians at Large with our at-large Libertarians, Dr. Senator Laura Ebke, Valerie Sarwark, and Erik Raudsep. We have hopes that at some point in time we're going to get Joshua Smith to join us on a regular basis and Richard Longstreth. Scheduling, it's a new show. We're working out what's the best time for everybody. But soon, we're going to have all the Libertarians at large. Instead of having 4 boxes, we're going to have 6 boxes. It's going to be really exciting. So let's go around the horn. Erik, how are you doing today?
Doing well. It's an exciting time in North Carolina. So definitely looking forward to discussing the debate that's going to be starting in 2 hours and a lot of other great stuff.
That's going to be good stuff. Valerie, I think you have some news from New Hampshire, right? You told me that City Council just made a big deal.
Yes, the City Council, the aldermen is what they're called here, had their mask mandate vote last night, and it was defeated 8-5. It was a mandatory mask mandate plus $1,000 fine for anybody caught without a mask.
What?
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I know.
I mean, this is not, and just to be clear, we're not talking Halloween masks. We're not saying they wanted forced participation in Halloween. It's all masks. Like
all masks.
Wow.
Everywhere.
That would have been a crazy thing to pass, especially in New Hampshire.
Yes.
And you guys live, just to be clear, you guys live in the heart of the city.
Yes,
so
we
live in one of the
right
urban
downtown
areas.
in the biggest city in the state. Yeah.
Got it. All right, good stuff. And Senator Ebke, what's happening in Nebraska?
In New Nebraska, nothing much is happening in Nebraska. It's turning cold here, so that's kind of fun. We don't have any mask mandates, except in Lincoln and Omaha. So where I live, we don't. But it's still kind of confusing. I was at the Capitol today and walking around, and they say masks are highly recommended, and so you carry your mask with you, and then depending on which door you go in, you say, maybe I better wear my mask, and here you go in there, and then half the office is wearing it and half isn't. So it's like, okay, so what should I do? You're trying to fit in, and it gets tricky.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things that I found about the way the people talk about the mask. So first of all, I have often thought that the way that people wear masks is interesting in and of itself, because you see a lot of people who wear masks in ways that are doing no good whatsoever. I mean, I'll demo this one. This is my favorite. I'm wearing a mask. I have it with me. That's good to go. I like this one.
Very helpful.
Because I see that all the time. And this is actually worse because it still fogs my glasses, and I'm not protecting anybody because, I happen to know that when I sneeze, explosion comes out. So, I mean, the thing is too, is that, this is the other thing that still frustrates me about it, is that, I wear a mask when I go out in public places because I don't know whether or not I'm infectious. I know that I have a lung condition. I transmit a lot of, I'm a carrier for a lot of diseases. And as a result, I worry about other people. And that's why I wear masks. I would never want to throw somebody in jail because they didn't wear a mask. I don't know what their situation is. I don't know what the rationale is. Whatever it is, that's not my business. I get to make a decision and decide what I want to do. Now, what kind of mask conversations are they having in North Carolina, Erik? I know you guys have had some spirited discussions, I can imagine.
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, people are talking about, do we make this a state mandate? Do we make this county by county? I mean, this is even coming up in our gubernatorial elections and also in lesser elections throughout the state of what are we going to be doing as far as mask mandates and how are we going to handle everything going on with the pandemic. It's really up for debate, and one of the reasons why it's so important for everyone to vote gold this November.
Yeah, I agree with that. And now, Laura, in Nebraska, have you guys had any controversy about this? Or Nebraska is a pretty red state, I would imagine.
Well,
it never even came up.
Yeah, we're really a red state, although, you got Omaha, which is much more purplish. And their Republican mayor actually instituted a mask mandate. Now, they have home charter rule. and so they have a little bit different set of rules under which they decide whether or not to have a mandate. Likewise with Lincoln, the Lincoln mayor was the first one to institute a mask mandate inside the city limits. But then we've had protests outside the Capitol, you know, the anti-mask league and things like that. So, I mean, it's kind of it's been kind of interesting to watch. And, you know, I can be personally sympathetic to both the pro-mask and the anti-mask side. I wear mine when I'm out in public most of the time, and but again, I would never put anybody in jail or fine anybody for not wearing one.
Right. So it's interesting, you know, I mean, I think most libertarians are pretty much on the same page in terms of course, we would never force anybody to wear a mask. It's one of those things that, you know, it's almost become a defining question about what's happening in our country. And it's kind of silly that it is, because it's not a question that should really even be asked. You know, most people, if you ask them to, you know, be considerate and stuff like that, I used to say this all the time. If you ask me to put my shoulder to the wheel, I will help you all I can. If you try to harness me and tell me which way to go, I am going to buck and I'm going to spit the bit, and that's it. And that's, I think most people realize that's the way masks could have worked if they'd come out with a thing. We're asking everybody, please think of your neighbor, wear a mask, something like that. And people would do it. In fact, that would be so much more effective. But
well, I mean, I'm sorry to interject here,
ahead.
but it's the exact same thing as when seatbelts became mandated in the 1970s. You saw massive fighting of seatbelt laws. And while the laws were absolutely ridiculous, when people were given the correct information and the fact that seatbelts actually do save lives, people started wearing their seatbelts. It wasn't the seatbelt laws. It was actually the information given to Americans that actually made the difference. When it was just the law that said you should do this because we say so, everyone was up in arms. It was when they had that fair conversation with American citizens of this is why you should wear seatbelts, that's when the compliance or the actual participation of wearing seatbelts happened. They should have taken a lesson from that and used it for the same exact thing with the masks. Forget the laws and give us the science and give us the data of why this is a good idea, and Americans will follow suit.
Exactly. And, you know, it's one of those things. I'm reminded there's a great David Letterman where he said, you know, things that would have happened if there had been no Ralph Nader. And one of them was piano wire seatbelts.
I think, you know, can I just get back to the mask for just a second? You know, I think one of the problems that we have with the masks and the whole defensiveness about masks is that we really haven't gotten the straight word on it. You know, in the very beginning, they said, don't wear masks. We're saving them for the medical personnel and all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden they said, well, you ought to wear a cloth mask. And so here in Nebraska, we had all sorts of people sewing cloth masks and, you know, taking them out to the clinics and the hospitals and all that sort of stuff and giving them away. And then, you know, towards middle of summer, when they finally got caught up on the supply, now they're saying wear masks, you know, and so we never did really get the straight word from anybody until, and maybe we still aren't getting it, but I think that, you know, I think that that's one of the problems. If the people in power aren't giving the straight story, you know, and just telling people the truth from the beginning, then you run into problems.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that's come out is that originally the no mask message was because they feared that there would be a run on PPE and hospital supplies, you know, hospitals wouldn't have it. To me, you could show no greater ignorance of the American character than to imply that when there is an emergency and the American people need to stand up, that they will act selfishly. Because we are dominatingly the most generous people on the planet. And I mean, all the time, I remember very clearly in Houston, they had, after Katrina, they brought refugees by bus to the Astrodome parking lot, and they were setting up camps there. And in Texas, you're not truly a Texan if your gas grill doesn't attach to the back of your truck and you can't bring it out there. And so Texans showed up and they started cooking for all these people who came to visit their town. Nobody had to ask them to do it. There's no mandate or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
If the government had been straight and said, here's our problem, we're going to have a run on PPE. And we know that masks make you safer, but we don't have enough to go around right now. Can you stand up for our healthcare providers? Of course we would have done it. It's this idea that they have to be in charge because,
Well, I mean,
all right, I'm going to
just
get
to
all
kind of
mad already.
illustrate your point and talking about cooking out and everything, in North Carolina, we predominantly eat yellow onions with our barbecue and all of that stuff. But when all of the hurricanes and inclement weather has hit Texas, North Carolina has actually stepped up our growing of white onions, and we're shipping them to Texas because that's what they enjoy, and we're doing it at virtually zero cost for Texans because they're in a hard spot right now. So absolutely, Americans are hugely giving, and we're considerate of what other people want and like.
And so then to take the logical libertarian step by this, is government threatened by people taking care of each other?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's good. We want a couple comments along the way from people in the audience. We are now going to go to our second favorite segment on the show, which is the news quiz. As you guys know, every Friday, the New York Times comes out with a news quiz. And you'd think we would worry that because we do our show on Thursday, so 6 days after the news quiz, that somebody would get the answer. But no libertarians actually reading the New York Times on a regular basis. So here we go with the first question. This is last week's news. Which drug maker paused its coronavirus vaccine trials on Monday because of participants' quote-unquote unexplained illness? Was it Eli Lilly, Johnson & Johnson, Novavax, or Citus Cadila?
I know the answer to this because
Yep.
Johnson & Johnson has a headquarters here in North Carolina, and it has been in our local news.
And the
All
truth be
right.
told, Erik is really just smarter than us.
No.
At least me.
So okay, I'll be totally honest here. I am a subscriber to the New York Times, and I am a subscriber to. But I do avoid the quiz because I know that this is coming up. But I get news alerts for a lot of these things, and I do read the articles, and I also read our local newspaper of News and Observer.
Isn't
I
that
try to
what
be well
everybody
informed.
says about the New York Times, that they read it for the articles?
That's what
I think that's another publication, Dan. I really think
okay.
that's another publication.
Fair enough. All right. Yep. Sure enough. Johnson & Johnson paused late-stage clinical trials. So, in a previous life, I worked at Massachusetts General Hospital, and I got to see a lot of clinical trials going on. This is completely normal. It's the sort of thing that you want to see happen. You don't want them saying, well, something bad's happening, but we're going to keep going anyway. So all the people are like,
Science.
exactly. One of the things that, was impressed upon me at an early age is that potentially the greatest accomplishment of man is the scientific method. Mm-hmm. We hypothesize, we observe, then we experiment, and we decide, is our hypothesis confirmed? And if so, then it becomes a theory. So all of those things, become a really important part of our process, the scientific process. People don't want that to happen, and so it's kind of strange, but it's the way we do things. Number 2, what did the California Republican Party admit to placing across the state? Is it A, billboards calling Kamala Harris a monster? Notice my correct pronunciation of her name. 15 months into the election cycle. Erroneous voting instructions, deceptively labeled ballot boxes, or malfunctioning voting machines? Laura knows.
I know it was the ballot boxes.
Oh my God.
Deceptively labeled ballot boxes.
I agree, and I will still call her Kamala because in Finnish that means horrible.
Interesting.
And it's spelled the same way.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's very interesting. So so Justin wins as being the first person in with the correct answer on the comments. Good job, Justin. Justin also said it was the ballot boxes. On Monday, California officials sent a cease and desist order to the state and county level Republican parties, ordering them to remove the separately labeled official drop boxes that were virtually indistinguishable from the drop-off sites sanctioned by the state. A spokesman said the California Republican Party would continue to distribute the boxes without identifying them as Republican ballot drop boxes. One of the interesting things about voting by mail, as opposed to having drop boxes, is that there are, and we're not obviously fans of laws, but there are a plethora of laws involving fraud via the mail.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of laws about fraudulent looking boxes.
Yeah.
The story speaks for itself. I don't think there's much more we can say about that. Oh, now this is a big one. Which two countries are in a battle over the disputed territory of Nagorno-Karabakh? Is it Armenia and Azerbaijan, Armenia and Turkey, Armenia and Georgia, or Turkey and Georgia? I know you guys know this. We're going to skip it. Too easy. I'm just kidding. I have no idea.
Actually, again, I'm going to credit my father with this
Right.
because these are FSUs. So it is Armenia and Azerbaijan.
All right. Armenia
Wow.
and Azerbaijan. Ryan Kordecki, you win the prize. Oh, wait, no. Drew wins the prize by actually not typing out Armenia and
Trying to get in
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
Yes, good job by getting A and A. But I'm going to give Ryan a thing for being the first person to type it all out. Yeah, sure enough, simmering decades-long conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan over the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh erupted a few weeks ago in a conflagration of trench warfare, drone strikes, artillery bombardment. More than 500 Armenian soldiers have died, along with scores of civilians. Dude, trench warfare, right? I mean, that's just terrible.
Yeah.
The idea that, you have soldiers sitting there in dugout positions, and then they get out of them and they charge people with automatic weapons and minefields, etc. It's insane. I've always heard it said that if the draft age were 50, and you could only draft 50-year-olds and older, there would never be any war. Because old guys like me are just too tired. I can't be bothered to go. But also, too much, right? I mean, it's insane. Why would you have to have, why would you have a war over conflict? And now, of course, in reality, there's a great libertarian solution to this as well, right? Market forces already to strive to take care of the value of property. If that property is worth so much money, somebody's going to pay for it, and they'll be happy to do so. And there's a lot of people who would be happy to sell their property to, even a hated people from another country if the price is right.
Yep. Money talks.
Money talks, other things walk. James Harrison raised, and here's his picture, raised $57 million from July through September, the highest quarterly fundraising total for any Senate candidate in the U.S. history. Who is he challenging in November? Is it Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado, what? Senator Martha McSally of Arizona, or Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky? Now, obviously, we have some inside knowledge in this. But go ahead, Val.
Lindsey Graham, right?
Yeah.
Is challenging Lindsey Graham. And I mean, I have heard from people on the ground. Our presidential campaign is Ryan. Good job. Our presidential campaign is, based in South Carolina. So I've heard from people on the ground. Lindsey Graham's really going to lose. This is a pretty big deal. South Carolina, electing a Democrat, electing an African American. It's it's a changing of the guard, and it's an interesting take too on where the country is really going. I think there's a lot of things that people say, decisions that people had made that if they were to look back and see what the results were 20 years later, would they have done it? There's this fascinating series on talking about 9/11, which is not something you can really talk about in an easy way in a political show, but saying if Al-Qaeda knew where we would be in 20 years, what would happen to them? Sort of the destruction of their thing, the destruction of the caliphate, and of their operational strength. Would they have still done it? We don't know, but it's interesting to have debates like that. I wonder, 20 years from 2016 and 2036, when I'll be 40, will the Republicans look back and say, wow, electing Trump was the worst thing we could ever have done to our party?
They're going to be like, remember when we had a party?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep,
I think this is the beginning of the death knell of the old guard, as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I think it's true too. I mean, it's interesting because the Democrats are going through a similar sea change.
Absolutely.
It's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, if they lose, numbers certainly don't say they're going to, but if the Democrats lose, they have nobody to blame but themselves. They ran the worst of all the candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say Marianne Williamson was the worst candidate, but I certainly had a soft spot for Marianne Williamson. And that one statement, right? It's not that we're afraid that we're weak; it's afraid that we're afraid that we're powerful beyond belief.
So I have to tell you about the Senate race in Nebraska. Okay, so in Nebraska we have Ben Sass, who's the Republican and the incumbent, and it's crazy because from my perspective, there's a lot of Republicans who really dislike Ben Sass. They really, really, really dislike Ben Sass in Nebraska. And then you have the Democrats who nominated a guy back in our primary back in May who within about a month and a half, they disavowed and they were trying to get him off the ballot because he had texted some sexually explicit stuff to a staff to an underage staff member or some such thing. So then the Democratic Party has a write-in candidate that they're trying to get on the ballot instead. And the Democrats are going to lose regardless, right? So in Nebraska, so here we've got Ben Sass, who stands to get 70% of the vote in the general election, and then he blasts Trump last week in I don't know, one of the papers in a series, and I guess in a series of tweets or something, and so now I keep having people tell me about Gene Sayedick, who's running for the Libertarian Party.
Interesting.
And so I anticipate that Gene will have will pick up some nice votes, both from the Republicans and the Democrats this year.
That's going to be an interesting race to watch. It would be pretty astonishing to see, a Democrat really push Sass around. Yeah. Sass he's not endorsed Biden though, right?
He hasn't endorsed Biden, and indeed, he votes with Trump most of the time. Right. But it's just one of those things that I think he's probably laying the groundwork for 2024, sure. and trying to separate himself from the president now.
That would be interesting. Has any Nebraska politician made it big? Big. I'm just trying to think.
No.
Okay. Like I've always thought Massachusetts punches above its weight in terms of the number of presidential candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, Bob Kerrey is, I think, the last one who ran.
Bob Kerrey, well. Yeah. Bob Kerrey was a guy I really respected. We differed politically, but that guy had character up to his eyeballs.
Yep.
All right. Question number 5. Carlos Acutis, a young Italian, may become the first millennial what? Bishop, cardinal, king, or saint? This is a tough one. And now we're going to go to the Pope comment, the Pope's decision after this, because that's a good question to talk about.
Well, I don't think he's a saint.
You can't be a saint. I think you have to be dead to be a saint.
Yeah.
Oh, Ryan has beat the team. Ryan says bishop. Let's see. Oh, Ryan, you tricked us.
I bet he's going to be a king. I bet he's going to be the king.
It says saint.
Saint? What?
So apparently he's dead.
What miracle did he perform?
Carlo, a teenager who lived in Milan and died in 2006, is on his way to becoming the first millennial to be recognized as a saint. On October 10th, he was beatified.
I love that picture.
I know. I think that's perfect.
Declared blessed. He performed a miracle And so the ceremony is the second to last step before he can be canonized as a saint.
I wonder what he's going to become the saint of. I mean, that'd be interesting.
Looks like football.
I assume texting. He's going to be the patron saint of text.
There you go. The saint of
Patron saint of texting, huh?
Yeah.
Football.
I'm pretty sure it's not filled, that spot. So, which university has agreed to pay nearly $1.2 million to female professors to address inequity? Is it Purdue, Princeton, Stanford, or Texas A&M? I mean, by process of elimination, it can't be Texas A&M, even though they're certainly probably the ones who are the worst at it. It's just I can't see A&M making that, and I say that as a University of Texas alum.
I'm going to say Princeton.
Yeah, I'm going to go Tigers.
I don't know.
All right.
Princeton.
No, Princeton is
there we go.
correct.
Team.
After review found that 106 female professors had been paid less than their male counterparts, Princeton agreed to pay nearly $1 million in back wages. They did not admit any wrongdoing, of course.
Of course.
Yep.
Funny. Shut up and leave.
Exactly. All right, now this one is my wheelhouse. The K-pop band BTS made comments during recent Korean War tribute that started a social media storm in which country? China, Russia, South Korea, or the United States?
Well,
And I'm
seeing
just
that
kidding.
they have now been banned in China, I'm going to go China.
Are you a K-pop fan?
I am not, but I know.
I
follow.
saw these guys on Graham Norton like 2 weeks ago. But
The fact that you watch Graham Norton just makes my heart sing. Damn,
dude, Graham Norton, that show's awesome. The
Oh,
fact
it's
that
hysterical.
he's hysterical, and the fact that they have it on Amazon Prime now, it's only 2 seasons, but it's better than like the YouTube ones that I had been watching in the past. Yeah, I love British panel shows, stuff like that.
They're the best.
Yep. All right, so we think it's China. I mean, it's going to be China, of course. I mean, that war is brutal. It is, and that's, you know, it's a story that people should know. We don't glorify war or anything like that, but you should know the story of the Marines in the Quezon Reservoir, because that's an important story to know.
I mean, it's more or less classified as a Cold War that gets a little warm every once in a while.
Yep. And crazy Douglas MacArthur too. We should throw that in there as well.
Yes.
Everything I know about the Korean War, I learned watching MASH.
Yep. Yeah.
when I was in middle school, you know.
Yeah, we're roughly the same age. I remember we've talked about this beforehand. MASH was such a cultural thing that everybody watched it, and so when we went to school, everybody had this shared thing to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That does not exist anymore. There is no media event that everybody watches.
Remember when they went off the air?
I do. The last episode
that was amazing.
unbelievable. And I mean, that's Alan Alda gets a lot of heat for a lot of stuff, but that whole thing in the episode, like where, he's sort of, spoilers for those of you who haven't seen it, he has a mental breakdown because he's been on a bus trying to save the life of a child and the child is dead. Or no, the mother kills the child to keep them from being discovered by the North Koreans. And, he just loses it. And the psychologist helps him to remember it. And he's like so mad. He's like, why did you make me remember that? It's amazing. It was an amazing show. Good stuff. All right. The mother of which former U.S. presidential candidate died Monday at 108? I think we know that.
Oh,
You know that?
John McCain.
Yeah.
Yep.
The
I was
former
like-
Arizonan knows that. Huh?
What are they giving these people that have been in high-powered government positions? Because I know that I'm not the only one that didn't know that Bob Dole was still alive, right?
I
Right.
know, he tweeted.
What money do they get, and how come I'm not going to be able to have those?
Well, and just watching the hearings, and you've got Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Grassley, both 87. It's like,
Yep.
whoa.
I mean, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? I mean,
Yeah.
up until she died.
89.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I think she might have been 87 too. But there is definitely a thing about it. It's interesting because so there's a guy named Ray Ozzie. He's a computer scientist. He invented Lotus for those of you who remember Lotus Notes and Lotus 123. And he works for Microsoft now. But he's really, still one of the great computer scientists still working. And he's a firm believer that we are 50 years away from being able to put your consciousness into a machine. Now, I don't want to debate whether that's true or not. That's a different thing. But here's the thing. He's 70. And so he feels like he has to live to 120. So he does everything that he possibly can. They did this amazing show about him. In the morning, every day, he takes out 2 apples and he peels them, and he eats the peels and throws away the apples because, like, they has the fiber and the nutrition.
It's a Jekyll and juicer.
Yeah, exactly. He wants no sugar in his diet at all. He's doing all these amazing things to like try to do it. And so at one point they take him to a doctor and they do a blood test, and the doctor says, if I didn't know who this was, I would say that this was a 40-year-old man.
Wow.
And so, it's interesting. There's something to it. On the other hand, if I just ate apple peels, I don't know that I'd really want to go to 120.
Yeah.
That's a lot of days.
If I
I
can
have to say, though, when they broke the news about John McCain's mother dying at 108, I was rather surprised that the first comment after they said that she had died was that she died of old age and not COVID.
Yeah. Well, the one interesting thing about it too is that they say that the worst experience is the death of a child because your children are supposed to be immortal, right? They live longer than you, something like that. I did think about that, and I thought about the crap that she had to deal with, and John McCain, of course, saying when people were saying he was too old to run for president, he's like, I'll believe that when my mom tells me. Bring her out on events. So good stuff. Roberta McCain, definitely a fixture. Number 9, which UNESCO World Heritage Site opened for one tourist who, because of the pandemic lockdown, waited 7 months to visit it? Is it Machu Picchu, Statue of Liberty, Taj Mahal, or Vatican City?
Valerie seems so excited. I am going to defer to what she says.
I finally know one, and Eric's dad didn't tell me. It's
It is Machu Picchu. I don't think the Statue of Liberty and Vatican City are World Heritage Sites. Just thinking that.
I think Vatican City is a World Heritage Site. The Statue of Liberty is not.
Yeah. Interesting. Somebody on our we're going to make our audience be our research team. So somebody look it up and tell us whether or not Vatican City is actually a World Heritage Site. Drew, you win for being the first person with it. Now you have to go look up and find out whether or not Vatican City is a
That's your
World
prize.
Heritage Site. Right. Machu Picchu is on my list of things to go do as well. It's pretty amazing, right? Top of the mountain, stuff like that. Which soccer star? I think that's a contradiction. That's an oxymoron, right? Can't be a star and play soccer. Sorry. The Americanism there. Which soccer star?
I agree with you, Dan.
Which soccer star has tested positive for the coronavirus? Sam Kerr, Lionel Messi, Megan Rapinoe, or Cristiano Ronaldo?
I will defer to the audience on this one.
yeah.
I don't know.
I am going to guess Ronaldo because he plays for Real Madrid.
See,
in
now I was
Spain.
going to guess. The only one that I know is Megan.
Right.
So-
So I will put in a little bit of my soccer knowledge here. For those of you who don't know, Lionel Messi is probably the best player to ever play soccer. It's an amazing story. He was raised by a football club because he had a biological problem that he wasn't going to get treated, but he was in a youth group. And so Manchester United paid for him to get all this advanced medical treatment. He still suffers from some of the consequences. He's only like 5'4", 5'5", but
Wow.
he's the best player in the world. And he plays for Argentina nationally. And at one point when Argentina played the United States, the Americans fouled him like, 20 yards back from the penalty box. And I'm just like, oh, he's going to make him pay for that. And sure enough, everybody knew he was going to shoot it right in from that distance. Did it right in the top hand corner.
Danielle
Amazing.
says that Vatican City is a World Heritage.
Oh, it is. Danielle, thank you very much. You are awarded one bonus point for the audience. So I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess Ronaldo. It is Ronaldo. So Ronaldo's the second best player in the world, and he's pretty
Okay.
phenomenal. Yeah, it's not surprising. He lives in Portugal, but plays for Spain. He's playing Symptoms, and they moved him away from the rest of Portugal's player. There's a big European tournament going on right now, so it's Messi. Drew's questioning my soccer knowledge. Messi plays for. Actually, he doesn't play for Barcelona anymore, but Ronaldo plays for Real Madrid. And every year, when the two great Spanish teams play, Real Madrid and Barcelona, it's called El Clásico. Anyway, that's Ronaldo. In addition to being a good soccer player, also a really good-looking guy. Pretty easy to hate him. Question 11. iPhone 12 has arrived. Which of its improvements has Apple emphasized? 5G, larger size, improved speakers, or watertight?
Oh, it's got to be 5G.
It's the
Oh.
5G.
Everyone's talking 5G.
5G.
5G. All right. I'm going to come back to Justin said Ronaldo plays for Juventus. I confess I'm always a year behind, so I could be wrong about that.
'Cause you're watching
5G. It is
Martin
5G.
Luther.
So, 5G was fascinating to talk about because it's so fast that people are saying you won't have Wi-Fi in your house anymore if you live in an area that has 5G. Everybody will just connect to the 5G network. And what's amazing, I can remember back when I worked for Palm, we worked on they had the first handheld device, and they talked about 3G coming online. And we're like, oh my God, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be so fast. We're excited about it. And we saw the specifications for what 4G was going to be because they defined what it was going to be long before they had the technology. And we're like, it was 1 meg per second upload. We're like, 1 meg per second upload? That's a lightsaber. You wouldn't want to be in the way of that. But as it turns out, it was, they made it. Jared wins, 5G. Good job. We have completed the quiz, 10 out of 11.
Hey,
That's pretty good for
job.
us.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about, one of the questions that was in there is we talked about the saint that was being the millennial saint, the saint of texting. Let's talk about the other big news out of the Catholic Church. Anybody
yeah.
see it?
Oh yeah.
What was it?
The Pope has said that LGBTQ or GSM individuals have the right to have a family, and he approves of civil unions, not marriage, but civil unions for all GSM individuals, and that they are in fact children of God.
So that's a pretty big deal for
That's a good one.
yeah.
That's a good one.
Now, let's just be clear, they're a little late to the game, right? Episcopals have had ordained ministers who are homosexuals.
There's lesbian bishops already in the Episcopal Church and everything. Yeah.
Reformed Jews, speaking for my own people, it's like every other person. It's astonishing. Well, there's this school in New York that trains cantors, which are the people who sing at services. And for whatever reason, there was a cult of women who went there and spread out, and they're just amazing musicians. And they're everywhere. So Catholic Church, a little late to the party. I think they're ahead of the Southern Baptists. But, right. But it's an impressive thing. And so that leads to one of the interesting questions that libertarians talk about all the time is that, civil union is the whole way it came up is that the government gives all sorts of benefits to people who are married, adoption rights, hospital visitation rights,
Tax breaks.
Although, so it's interesting because a lot of people don't understand that there's also a penalty in your taxes when you're married. Who wants to explain the marriage penalty in your taxes?
I don't know. I have too many kids to get a penalty.
I'll explain it. So let's just say, right, my wife and I each make $100,000, hypothetically. Normally, if we were individuals, you pay a certain tax rate on your money up to $100,000. But if you file jointly, we have $200,000, and so everything that's over $125,000, we actually have to pay a higher tax rate than if we were filing singly.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, it's just dumb, but it's the
Depends on
federal
your
government.
tax bracket.
So, exactly.
And that's a wonderful game right there.
Yep. But so it's interesting because one of the things about this is that, a lot of times libertarians say, we kind of wish that the government would get out of the marriage business entirely and just have civil unions. I think we talked last time about what they do in France. Civil unions in France have a 5-year expiration date. And so you have to go in and renew them every 5 years or they automatically expire. It's actually a kind of interesting idea. But I think, and Jared's coming up with the same idea as us.
Yeah.
I think what we probably would prefer is that, what the Pope is sort of suggesting of, marriage be marriage and civil unions be civil unions. And I think most people would prefer that anyway, because I don't want to go to a church, to a house of worship that doesn't support the idea that anybody can choose their partner.
Right.
So preaching to the choir here on this one.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about two things. First of all, there was some pretty big news. We kind of spilled the beans 2 weeks ago, and but now it's all out in the open. We are talking about where is it? The American Debate Committee.
There you go.
All right, so we can talk about this now. Anybody want to give a little bit of an explanation about what the American Debate Committee is?
Well, Jo JOrgensen accepted her invitation yesterday at 7:30, so I was really excited about that. But this is the competitor to the presidential debate committee. And competition makes a stronger and better market. So definitely looking forward to seeing what the American Debate Committee can put together. And hopefully they actually do create a successful debate on the 29th. I'm sure they will. They seem to have a really good ground game together.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. For those of you who don't know, the debates that are going to happen tonight are only going to include the two old party candidates. And the reason why is because those debates are run by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is made up of Republicans and Democrats. The Committee for American Debate has said that they want to hold a debate, and the criterias, so this is actually something that the FEC requires. If you're going to hold a presidential debate, you have to publish your criteria beforehand. Excuse me. And so they've said that their debate criteria is very simple. Number one, constitutionally eligible to hold the office of President of the United States. Number two, appear on all 50 state ballots and the District of Columbia ballot. So that is a pretty straightforward thing. And the thing about it is, like I've already heard some people saying, well, why aren't the Greens being included in this debate? Well, here's the thing.
All the ballots. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not on all the ballots. But if this, if this catches on, the Greens are going to be thrilled to know that there's a bar that they can reach that they will get on the ballot in all 50 states, because right now there is no real bar that you can reach to get into the presidential debates unless you're a Republican or Democrat. And it's definitely frustrating, right? You guys probably have some thoughts on this.
Well, I think that this is one of the greatest opportunities for American little d-democracy out there. This is it's important for people to be able to vote, but it's also important for people to be able to gather information. And without that information, your vote is incomplete. So this rival to the commission, thank you, Matthew, is a great thing. Just because, whether all three candidates appear on stage together this year or not, the fact that we've got a new organization starting up and willing to establish new rules, I think is a huge thing. And, 4 years from now, we'll be there again.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about this is that, there's talk that they are going to mute people during the debate tonight.
Yes.
And I think if they mute the president, he is going to lose his... And
he may walk off.
he will probably go to this debate,
Yeah.
which would be pretty amazing.
Well, let's be honest. Have we ever known Donald Trump to turn down an opportunity to be on national television? I'm just saying.
You raise a very good point. And especially because it's interesting too. Like I don't think Biden, his team thinks that he should go to this sort of thing. Just where they are, what their strategy is going to be. His staff is afraid that if he gets on stage with Jo, he's going to sniff her hair or something like that. And I understand.
Jo's too old for him. I'm sorry. He goes after younger ones.
A good point. But I wonder if they, if the president gets mad and he decides that he's going to go because he wants to have one more debate where he can say what he wants to. And so here's the interesting thing about it. I don't know what the commission's planning on doing in terms of questions or who the moderators are going to be or any of that stuff. And so, the president can probably set his own terms in terms of, these are the issues that I want to talk about, stuff like that. I think it's probably going to be a very attractive thing for him.
Well, we already know that he's exceptionally upset with the fact that this debate was supposed to be predominantly about international policy.
Right.
And the questions that were submitted for review to the presidential candidates is largely domestic policy. So I think he really wants to have a conversation about international policy and prove to America once and for all how bad he is at it. So, let's go for it.
There's I can't remember who was, but one of the great zingers was everything that this guy knows about foreign policy, he learned at the International House of Pancakes. I want to say that Bush said it about Kerry, but or about Dukakis. But
It's amazing how it's still relevant. Yeah.
You raise a great point though of the questions were submitted for review to the candidates.
Oh yeah.
How insane is that?
Oh.
Right.
Val, let's talk about that a little bit. How crazy that is.
I mean, they could have given him that book that he gave to Leslie Stahl, and it would have been the same thing. Like he's going to talk.
Book?
Yeah, he's going to talk about whatever. They're going to ask a question. He's going to say whatever the hell he wants to say anyway, and it's going to be totally off topic. And then he's going to get mad when they mute him because he's not answering the question properly.
So let's talk quickly about that Leslie Stahl thing because I don't think everybody saw that.
Oh my God. So it was like what's her name? The Kylie, whatever.
Yeah. Kylie Minogue.
The press secretary, the new one. I
yeah.
can't keep track of them because they keep coming in.
Right.
Like, oh, look at this wonderful work that this administration has done over the past 4 years with healthcare. And it's like this book that's like literally like the tax code, as big as the tax code. And Leslie Stahl opens it up and like a reporter is there, takes all these pictures. Every single page is blank. Like, what is even going on here?
Yeah. And it was a staged moment,
Yeah.
right? So they had this staged moment and they showed her the book. I don't think they thought that she was going to open it.
Definitely.
I thought they're just going to say, look, here it is.
Wow, this is a very heavy book. Thank you.
Exactly. Let me take it home with me. And then, she had the audacity because, see, that's, I think, the thing that they didn't get. They didn't understand that for some people, books are for reading.
That's right.
It's like when you do the put $100 bill and then like a bunch of ones and then $100 bill, and,
Exactly.
Yeah,
well, there's a lot of people that think, books are great for Zoom backgrounds. Dum, dum, dum.
And what else is back there? I don't know. We got all sorts of other crap on the shelves.
Well, that's one of the things. We should do this in the LP. Friends of mine did at one point in time. You do what's called a shelfie, where you take a picture of your bookcase and you post that as a picture, and so people get to see what it is. The problem, of course, is that the temptation is to, edit it and put, oh, look, I happen to have the Republic back here.
Well, I actually do. Would you like me to pull one of the copies of my dissertation off the shelf?
That's a good one.
I have the Republic on here somewhere.
I have.
All right, show us a book, Eric. I'm putting you up on a big screen. Laura,
Actually,
you're next.
this is one that I've been reading lately. It's actually really interesting. It's the German Empire. It actually goes over the pre-Weimar Republic aspects.
Hohenzollern.
Pardon?
I was going to say back to Hohenzollern and
yeah, exactly. It exclusively goes over the last Kaiser, follows the 1870 to 1918, and it actually gives a lot of the methodology and the rationale for how the Weimar Republic was actually set up and why it was set up and the political ongoings in Germany leading up to that point. It's actually really fascinating. And if you're interested into German politics and why they headed in that direction, which is probably arguably the worst democracy ever set up, actually really good read. So
interesting. There's a movement in Germany to protest Weimar, where they refused to speak German in Germany. They would only speak English because people were so unhappy with what Weimar was doing. I mean, little did they know it was about to get a lot worse. But it's a fascinating thing. For a lot of people don't know, there is no Germany during the time of the American Revolution. There's a bunch of principalities. Germany's not unified as a country. For them to come together is, and the story of that, it's really pretty astonishing. And Prussia, right? Bismarck, all that stuff. That's pretty amazing as well. All right, Laura, did you have time? Did you find a book you want to pull off your bookshelf for us?
Oh, I didn't do that.
Okay. I was. You don't have to have a book. Valerie, do you have a book you want to recommend?
No. Hey.
Jared.
I don't read. I don't have time to read. I do People Magazine, and I love.
All right. Well, tell me, what's the big story in People Magazine right now?
Oh, it was. Oh my gosh, what was it? I don't know. My kids took the last one, and people can judge me about that, but at least they're reading.
No, it's good.
I can't remember. Oh, it's about Naya Rivera's son because she died in that horrible boating accident, and now somebody else has to raise her son. That's what. Yeah, but no. Normally I read cookbooks or I go to bed at night.
I don't even know who Naya Rivera is.
She was on Glee.
Okay,
right.
So Jared is asking what my favorite recent read is, and I have to say this. It's my dad's latest book. My dad is an author. It is a Western called The Long Walk by Ron Schwab, Schwab. He's a libertarian. You can get it on Amazon, and it's a story about. It's a fiction, but it's based on the Navajo movement in the 1864, 1865 time frame through New Mexico and Arizona and I don't know wherever else it was.
So it's interesting. I have recently been rereading The Tao of Pooh for people who haven't read it. It's a 50,000 foot view of Taoism, but there's interesting stuff there. I imagine, like a lot of you, I'm going to highlight myself. Well, I'll highlight all of us. I imagine, like a lot of you, I'm finding a lot of stress in my daily life right now, and having a contemplative book where I sit around and actually think about myself and my life and my place in the world has been soothing to me. And it's funny because I have not, thank you, Jonathan. I have not been, spending a lot of time thinking about that stuff for a while. And so, as sort of an exercise to, it's an interesting thing. I don't want to pry for you guys too much, but are you guys thinking more about your mortality now? I mean, in the middle of this pandemic? I think for me, it's being older.
It's being older, Dan.
It is being older.
Yeah, seriously, it's my birthday too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna hop off and say goodnight to my kids.
Good night.
Next week.
Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
You were Dan. You were talking about reading the Tao of Pooh as a relaxation.
Yeah.
I too do love the comic aspect, but my choice is Calvin and Hobbes. Whenever Spaceman Spiff is
Yes.
is my stress reliever. What can I say?
I am a huge Calvin and Hobbes fan.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so much stuff in that is so good. The transmogrifier, stuff like that. I've changed into a tiger. What time do we eat? Stuff like that. Those are great, and those are good too. I have a bunch of those giant comic books, cartoons. Far Side's one of my favorite.
Oh yeah.
And then one of the ones that's really good, but some people avoid it because it's political. But Doonesbury, man, that guy, the stuff that he chronicled from like the 70s to the 90s, just unbelievable. Really informed me. And there's nothing like that anymore.
I remember seeing Doonesbury on the Sunday Comics page, and what the topics that they were covering as a child were a little above my head, but as I grew older, I grew to appreciate Doonesbury quite a bit more.
Yeah, there's one of my favorite ones where Mark, who's like the hippie radical activist of the group, is sitting there, and I can take this comment off the screen, and he's yelling through a bullhorn, no, lock your arms together. Don't let them push you out of the way. Come on. And a police officer comes up to him next to him, and he's like, not like the old days, eh, long hair? He's like, you're right. These guys are terrible protesters. And one of those really fascinating experiences that I do believe that there was a concerted effort after the 60s by the government to say, we never want to see unrest like that again. We never want to see political dissension. And so they thought of all the ways that they could pacify people so that we would never, we never have it. But, I mean, that time has come again.
Oh, absolutely.
This is it. Right now, we are seeing,
And it's largely because of the government action in the 60s and 70s on how to pacify it.
Right.
Is actually the exact cause of the civil unrest that we see today. So, it's time to pay the piper.
Right, exactly. The idea that the crime bill made everybody safer, but it made everybody safer because not everybody was safer, right? It suppressed a lot of people.
Of course.
And that was the cost of it. And we're looking at it now. And of course, Joe Biden, the author of the crime bill, running for president now. We're seeing all that crazy stuff. Are you guys going to watch the debates tonight?
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
What are you looking for? Are you playing any drinking game during the debate?
I do not look forward to alcohol poisoning, so no, I will not be playing a drinking game with that. No.
I plan on popping popcorn and maybe having a beer.
I'm going to watch. I am going to be engaging in troll warfare. So I'm going to be hanging out on the PBS live stream feed, and about every 15 seconds saying, this wouldn't happen if Jo JOrgensen was elected.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So Jared Hall just asked why with multiple question marks. It's because I think all of us are a glutton for punishment, and that's why we ran for the LNC in the beginning. So this is just a continuation of that.
Right.
I'm just a political nerd. I just
we're all
these things.
We're all junkies.
It's entertaining.
This is our drug.
Well, and the thing about it is, obviously every moment is history, but we're living in a pretty historical time. I mean, I can remember watching the Carter Reagan debates, and I mean that was just a snooze fest. I mean, nothing exciting going on. Even later, none of the debates were really worthwhile. Ross Perot piped things up a little bit, but then we went back to snooze again. This is going to be. I mean, it's a hearts and minds election, right? We're talking about the direction of the country.
But let's be honest, those snooze debates are when they actually talk about policy that affects the United States, and they're not just yelling at each other. So those snooze debates are actually some of the more important ones, even though they're so difficult to watch.
Right. Well, so it's interesting. Do you remember any great debate moments? I do remember the sighing, Al Gore sighing, George Bush. It's not a lockbox. All your money isn't put into a lockbox. And I think if more people had understood that then, and this is obviously, 2000, right? If more people had understood then, because then, right, George Bush is saying, hey, Social Security's bankrupt. We better do something about it. That was 20 years ago when at least it wasn't actually bankrupt. It was just going bankrupt. Now, right, Social Security is paying out more than it puts in every year, which is so incredibly unsustainable. I mean, that's... Yeah,
so 1980s, there you go again.
Right. That's a
That was
classic.
that was classic. 1984 was I won't make an issue of my age, you know, and
If you
my
won't
my,
make
my my you know my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there've been good ones out there. You know,
Yep.
somebody they
Read my
most
lips.
Of you,
No
most of
new
them
taxes.
That was a
most of them get a good line.
destroyer.
Yeah,
That was
most of them get a good line.
Destroyer.
Justin points out when George Bush Sr. checked his watch during the debate. That's generally not a good move. I mean, nowadays you would do it because, right, somebody would be texting you the answers to questions.
That's
but
right.
Generally, not a good idea. Well, once again, our dear audience, you've wasted another hour watching us here, Libertarians at Large, talking about liberty, the country, and our fervent hope that it becomes freer somehow, some way. You've got as much to making that happen as we do. So thanks for tuning in. It's another great night. Watch the debate if you can stomach it. It's all of our country. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.